Kakadosh, Boker Or, Shavua Tov. Masechet Bava Metzia daf Bava Metzia daf 96a1. The Gemara says Rava holds, right? Rava Savala like Rabbi Yonatan. Remember that Rabbi Yonatan says that the extra vav, right, is like or. Umetaretz Ekrai, so he's going to say like Rabbi Yonatan. The Tanya was going to the Raita. Im be'avlav imo lo yishalem. If the owners are with it, you're not going to pay. Umashma di'ite betarvayu, so it's mashma, you have both of them. Whether during the time of the ones or the she'ela, meaning whether at the time that you borrowed the animal or the time when it happened, the force majeure, you have to be with the animal. The owners have to be with the animal. Umashma na, mean it's also mashma. If you only buy one and not the other, meaning let's say that the owner was only there at the time of the lending, but not at the time of the force majeure, you're going to be patur. You have to pay. That you're not there at all. And it's also mashma that if he's only going to be by one and not the other, meaning if he's only going to be by the borrowing and not the force majeure, the honest, or the other way around, you're going to be chayav. To teach you that if he's going to be there during the time of the borrowing, you don't have to be there during the time when it breaks or it dies. But if it's going to be during the time that it breaks or it dies, you still need to be there at the time of the she'ela. So therefore, that's why he's going to be chayav to pay, because he has to be there during the time of the borrowing. So says the Gemara, Eipuch ana. Why don't we say the opposite? The Baalim have to be during the time of the force majeure and not at the time of the borrowing. Meaning, what does make sense more? Right? Imagine right now, let's take John Paul. Yeah? Right? We have to choose everybody. Yeah? So that's it. We have John Paul. So, I come and I borrow something from John Paul. What does it make sense to say more? The fact that John Paul was with me at the time of the borrowing, meaning that we were borrowing it together, he was with me together, and now later on it dies or it breaks, so then I'm going to be patur. Or, at the beginning he wasn't with me. I took the animal by myself. But then, at the time when it dropped dead or whatever it is, he was with me. What makes sense more? During the time when it dies. Not during the time of the borrowing. So that's what the Gemara asks. It makes much more sense to say that when the owner is there at the time of the force majeure, that's when you should be patur. Not just because of the time of the borrowing. What do I care at the time of the borrowing? Yeah? So says the Gemara, Eipuchana. Why don't I say the opposite? Answers the Gemara, Mistabra de she'ela adifa. No. It's better at the time of the borrowing. Why? Mishum dekamaitila l'rshuteh. Because that's when it goes to my reshut. Meaning, if right now it was during the time of the borrowing, it never came to my possession. Because you still were holding on to it. It's like Hilu, you're lending it to me, but you still have the chains, the how do you call it? The leash. You're still there. So that's why at the time of the borrowing is more important. At the time of first majeure, it could be that you just saw it, fine, but you already know that I'm obligated to it. So you don't care. Yes. Yeah. 100%. So says the Gemara Adra, but the opposite. Shivura umeta adifa. Chayav be'ontzea. He says that Shivura umeta is better. Why? Because you're going to be chayav in ontzim. Right? So he says, ilo she'ela, if there was no borrowing, Shivura umeta maybe. So 1 second. So how is it that it breaks or dies? Obviously, it had to be, right, that's what's causing the ptur. What are you going to do then? So if it's still better during the time of the borrowing, the second that you borrow the animal, you're chayav in the mizonot. And therefore, since you're chayav in the mizonot, that's why he says, right, that's why you're going to be chayav in all the different onsim and everything that happens. Okay, but you're obligated to pay for the food the second that you borrow it. Ravashi comes and he says, it's a pasuk. If you're going to borrow something from your friend, and the friend is not with him, you have to pay. If the friend is with him, you're going to be patur. So therefore, this pasuk is talking about during the time of the she'ela in itself. So he wants to say that we actually learn it not because of the be'alav anymore or not. He just says, from your friend. You're taking it from your friend. So if from that pasuk, you're already learning it. So says the Gemara, if so, be'alav anymore, be'alav imo, what do I need it then? Meaning, until now, we were always learning the concept from be'alav imo, be'alav imo. If the owners are with it or the owners are not with it. But if you're going to learn it from the pasuk of v'chi shal me'im re'ehu, so I don't need be'alav imo, be'alav imo. What do I need that for? So he says it, right? Ilav hanach, if it wasn't for the fact of this pasuk, hava mina hayocha deka, I would have just said, who you're borrowing it from? You're borrowing it from a friend. Who are you going to borrow it from? From your enemy? When was your enemy going to lend you something? Obviously, it's from your friend. So if it wasn't for the fact of Be'alav Imo or Lo Be'alav Imo, I wouldn't have been able to learn it. It's only now that I have Be'alav, now you can learn it from Imreu. Bayra Mimber Chaman. Chaman comes and he asks the following question. She'ala lirovah. Imagine right now you borrow the animal in order to be rovea, the animal. And now it dies. Meaning you wanted to do an avirah with the animal. Bestiality. And now what happens is it dies. Ma, what's the halacha? Kideshayle in sheba'inan, right? Do we say that you're going to ask the animal, right? And therefore we don't have it. Or dilmar, maybe meaning, listen, you borrowed it for that, and that's it. Or we say and that they don't lend it out for that. Or dilmar, maybe tamamai. What is it be'emet? That you're going to be chayav and onsim mishum hana, because you're benefiting from it. Vanami le'ana, he has ana. At the end of the day, you wanted to borrow the animal to have benefit from it. So what do I care whether you wanted to benefit from it with an avirah or not an avirah? At the end of the day, you were going to benefit. Right? Another question. Shala le'raot ba. You come, right, and you borrowed it to show that you're rich. This guy has a Rolls Royce and a Bentley and a this and a Jaguar and a Porsche and a this. So he comes and he borrows 5 cars. Now, somebody, they come, they walk by your house. This guy has a Rolls Royce over there and a Bentley there and a Jaguar and a Porsche and a this. Rich guy. And he borrowed all of them. What? Borrowed all of them. Yeah? What's halacha? Mamona ba'inan. Do you need that it has to be shaveh kesef? Va'yikan it's shaveh kesef. Odilma, mamona you have hana. Here you don't have hana. Because you didn't even use it. You didn't do anything with it. You were just showing that you're rich. Another third question to do with onsin. She'ala la'asoba pachot mipruta. What happens if you borrow it, but you're only going to use it less than shaveh pruta? Do we say mamona be'inan at the end of the day it's money and you have the money? Or do we say that anything which is less than shaveh pruta, it's not worth anything? A fourth question. Shal shte parot la'asoba em pruta. What happens if you borrowed 2 cows to do a shaveh pruta between both? That means each one is not shaveh pruta on its own. Do we say zilbat al shoel mashil that we go after the lender and the borrower and you have shaveh pruta? Or do we say you have to go after the animals and on each individual animal you don't have money because it's less than a shaveh pruta? Yeah? Everyone understood the questions? 4 different questions. So the Gemara is going to try to now answer up 3 of the answers. 3 of the sfekot. He says, Sha'al mishutafin. If you're going to come, right? So those are just 4 different questions. Now we're going to have 3 doubts of Rabbi Merchama. Sha'al mishutafin v'nishalo echad mehen. What happens if you borrow, there are two people, they're shutafs, partners in an animal. And then what happened? Nishalo echad mehen. One of the shutafin, they come, right, and he borrowed it. But he didn't ask the other one. What's halacha? Yeah, meaning that you basically only asked one of the owners. Kulo be'alav ba'inan. Do you know that you need the entire thing of the owners? Veleka, you don't have it because you didn't ask both owners. Well, Dilmar, maybe, right? At least from that half, you should be patur. A second question. Shutafin sheshalu, partners that borrow. And one of them only borrowed. What's halacha? Do we say that it's kulo shoel ba'inan, that you need the entire concept of the entire thing, and here you don't have it because it was only one of the partners that borrowed it? Or Dilmar, maybe the half that he borrowed, it should be chayav. Third question. Yeah, sha'al me'aisha. You borrow a para from the nichse melug, from the woman. V'nishal bala, you ask the husband. V'isha shesha'ala v'nishal bal. Right? Or he comes and he says, right? Or a woman that borrows the para from somebody else, and the mashiv v'nishal bal, and he asks the husband. Ma'u, what's halacha? Because in these 2 cases, do we say that the she'ula be'balim it's patur, or it's not considered she'ula be'balim? Because basically, you took it from belonged to the woman, but you borrowed it from the husband, or you borrowed it from the husband. It was really the woman's. So he says, "Kinyan perot kigiran negufta milot." Here, at the end of the day, who gets the perot of the nifse melug? The husband. When the woman brings in property to the marriage, the husband eats the fruits of the properties. It's called kinyan. So is kinyan perot like kinyan aguf, like the actual property, or not? Right. Another question. Amale Ravina Ravashi. Go borrow from me, right, right? The parato liploni, and he says that somebody also, right, to the same person, and then he gets mahu. Be'alav mamash ba'ina veleka. Do you need the mamash the balim, and you don't have it here? Or dilma maybe shlucho shel adam kemoto. You have the shaliach, ve'ika. Meaning, at the end of the day, here you don't have the real owners. You have the messenger. So, for example, Baba Chaki lent me his car, but he didn't lend it himself. Meaning, he lent it, but then he sent his messenger. He sent his son with him. So now, so it's a shliach. So is that enough or not? So the last two, the Gemara says, Amal Ravacha Bered Ravavia Ravashi, Baal, the husband, is a machloker Rabbi Yochanan and Resh Lakish. Shaliach is a machloker between Rabbi Yonatan and Rabbi Yoshia. The husband is a machloker Rabbi Yochanan and Resh Lakish. They who stated, Hamochesed lechavrov leperot. If you're going to sell your field to your friend for the fruits only, Rabbi Yochanan says, Mevi v'koreh, you bring the bikurim and you read the bikurim. Resh Lakish says you bring it, but you don't read it. Why? Rabbi Yochanan says you're going to bring it and you're going to read it because kinyan perot, it's a kinyan guf. And therefore it's like as if that you own the land. Now you don't own the land, you only get the perot, but it doesn't matter. But you're able to bring the bikurim are the first fruits, and you read it. Right? You read the psukim and everything. The Shaki says you bring it, you don't read it, but kinyan perot, it's love kinyan guf adami. Shliach is a machlok Rabbi Yonatan and Yoshia. The Tanya was learned to the Braita. Omer l'apotropus. If you're going to say to an apotropus, remember an apotropus is the agent which is in charge of the field. Right? Kol nedarim shetei ishti noderet mikana she'avo mekom lo niyafela. And so he comes and he tells his agent, listen, any type of a neder that my wife makes until I come back, do a farat nedarim on it. Yachol, what, you think it's going to be mufar? Tamulomar, isha yikimel isha. It's only the husband that can do it. These are the words of Rabbi Yoshia, which means you cannot appoint a shaliach to do a farat nedarim. You can't appoint a messenger to annul the vows of your wife. It's only you. Isha hafirim, isha. He's the one that Rabbi Yochanan says, Matzim v'chol b'kosha, shlucho shel adam kamoto. If shlucho shel adam kamoto, you should be able to do it. Another question. Amar le Rav Ilish le Rav. Haomer le'avdov, you're going to tell your servant, Tzevi sha'elim parati, go out and borrow for me the, what's halacha? Which means he's going to lend out and he sends his servant to be lent out. So tibai lemanda meshluchot shel adam kamoto, tibai lemanda meshluchot shel adam eno kamoto. It's a question about according to both mandamars. Why? Tibai lemanda meshluchot shel adam kamoto. Hane, meaning when are we going to say this? Whether shliach to bar mitzvahu, when he can actually do a mitzvah, but an eved cannot do a mitzvah. Meaning, right? The eved is not really he can't do any mitzvot. He's mamash. He's your slave. A shaliach, he can do all the mitzvot. He can do anything he wants. Or dilmar, maybe we're going to say even according to mandamar en shluchot shel adam kamoto. Hane mila shliach, but an eved. Yad Eved Yad Rabo. The Eved is 100% like his master. And therefore, just like the master came, so to the Eved is going to come. So Elmaleh, he says, Mistabra Yad Eved Yad Rabo. It's like Yad Eved Yad Rabo. Okay? Baal b'niksei ishto, a husband in the properties of the wife. Tzadik Bava Mubet, 96b. A husband in the property of the wife. Shoel Avi o Socher Avi. Meaning, the woman comes, she's rich, she gets married to her, she brings in properties. Is the husband considered a borrower or a renter? The body of the land still belongs to the woman. If he divorces her, he has to give her back the nichse. That's called nichse. Ken, kinyan perot. He gets the rents, he gets the fruits. But the body of, can he sell it? No. It doesn't belong to him. It belongs to the wife. Yes, 100%. Always. That's called nichse melug. There's a difference between nichse melug and nichse tzon barzel. Nichse melug, the way that it comes in, it goes out. Nichse tzon barzel, if it goes up in value or down in value, he takes the responsibility and then he has to give it back that way. There's a difference between nichse melug and nichse tzon barzel. But at the end of the day, it's hers. He can't do anything with it. It belongs to her. So that's the question. Is he a renter or a borrower? That's the question. Yeah. Automatically. Yeah, automatically. Yeah? So now it says the Gemara. Yeah? He says, what is a husband in the property of the wife? Is he considered a borrower or a renter? So Amar Rava comes and he says, Lefum churfa shabeshta. Because of his charifut, because he's so sharp, he made a mistake. Manav shach. If he's a borrower, so she'ela bebe'alim. And if he's a renter, schirut bebe'alim. Hey, the owners are always there. She's always with him. She was at the time, right, when she came into the marriage. So what is the question, Rabbi Mechama? The agar mina para ve'ada nasbah. He first rented the animal, and then he married her. You understood? That means he first rented it, and then he got married to her afterwards. So is it considered that he's a borrower or a renter? Shoel havi, if you're going to tell me it's a borrower, and then it's taking out from the schirut of the lo ba'alim, or dilma, maybe socher havi is considered a renter, and schirut is still there. So says the Gemara, what's the difference? If he's going to be shoel, te'ati she'ela be'ba'alim, and it's going to take out from the schirut, isocher nami havi, you're going to have the schirut ba'alim, and it's schirut shelo ba'alim. So he says, but rather the question was, right? Ki kamibai le'Rabbi Mechama, kigon da'agri ihu ihi parach me'alma ve'hada nasba. He says the woman, when she's still a pnuya, right, she rented it out to somebody else, and afterwards he got married to her, and then the husband is allowed to use the parah. And now the question is that you have two shomrim. The woman comes and she rented it out to somebody else, right? And now the husband accepts it upon himself once he gets married, and then the woman is found with him during the time of the melacha, but the bala parah is not with him, and now it's the nsa. Are you going to be chayav or not? According to Rabbanan, that they say shol mishalem lesocher, that the borrower has to pay to the socher. Lo tebay lecha, for sure you have to pay. Tevadai she'ela be'ba'alim, it's considered she'ela be'ba'alim, and then you wouldn't have to be paying in such a case. So he says, when's the question? According to Rabbi Yosef, that he says that par'al le'ba'alim rishonim, you have to give back to the first original owners. What's the halacha? Is you consider a shoel or a socher? Meaning, imagine right now you come and you rent an animal, and then somebody borrows it from you. So one more time, you rented it, and somebody borrows it from you. Now what happens? Who do you have to give it back to? The original owner, or to the guy that you borrowed it from? So Amar Rava comes and he says, Baal, the owner, he says, the husband is not considered a shoel, not considered a socher, he's considered buying it, a lokeach. From Rabbi Yosef Chanina. But says Rabbi Yosef Chanina, Be'usha yitkinu, and Usha they instituted, Haisha shemachra b'nimsei melu b'chayei bala umeta, abal motzim yad lekochot. Not only can the husband not sell the field, the woman cannot sell the field. Because even though this property belonged to the woman, she cannot sell the field. Because once she got married, the field is subjugated to the husband. And therefore, even if she sells it, the husband could take it out. Why? There I said that the husband cannot sell it. Now we're talking about the woman cannot sell it also. She cannot sell it. Because it's a no man's. Yes, because at the end of the day, right, it's going to be in the middle of both. Okay? So he says that's what they instituted in Usha, meaning the woman, it belongs to her, the actual karka, right? But the husband, but she cannot sell it. But the man belongs the fruits. So each one is subjugated to the other one. Okay? Bay Rami Barchama. Rami Barchama comes and asks the following question. Baal b'niksei ishto, the husband and the properties of the woman. Mima'al, is there a concept of mi'ila or not? Meaning, you know that if you come and you use something of the Bet HaMikdash, you're chayav mi'ila. What is mi'ila? Mi'ila is that you have to pay the keren, the principal, the chomesh, the 1/5, and you have to bring a korban mi'ila. So Amar Rava comes and he says, man lim'ol. Who's the one that's going to do the mi'ila? Lim'ol Baal? Are you going to tell me it's the husband? Te'tera nichale del nikne? That he wants to be zochen, something that's permitted. Isura, but he doesn't want to do the isur. Right? Which means, who's doing the milah? He doesn't want to acquire it if it's going to be belonging to the Kdesh. He didn't know about it. So if he doesn't know about it, how, what's going on? So timol ihi. It should be her. So he says, she only wants something of eter. She doesn't want an isur. So nima alu bedin. If it's going to be the bedin, they only said that the husband is considered lokeach only for a heter, not for isur. Rather Rava says, Baal ma'al lechshiyotzi mididahava motzi ma'ot ekdesh lechulin. He says the husband is going to be being chayav me'ilah when he takes it out, when he buys it, or he gives it as a present. Just like somebody takes ma'ot hekdesh and he takes it out to chulin, he's going to do me'ilah. Okay, so that's when there's going to be me'ilah done. When he comes and he gives it out, right, that's when it's going to be me'ilah. So we're going to ask the following question again. Kachash basar mechama melacha mai. Remember that a shoel is going to be patur for certain things. What happens right now if it became weakened? It became skinny, lost a lot of weight when I borrowed it. What's halacha? Mai. Elmaleh, he says, Haomer Rabbanam Rav Chilkiah ben Rav Avia Shmei, right? Rav Chilkiah, the son of Rav Avia, is his name. Miklal, he says, Techimeta mechama melacha mechayev. He says, if it's going to be mechama melacha, it should be chayav. He says, Neim alav leukma bekilta shilta. I didn't put the animal in such a way. Ela, but rather, Rabbi says, Lo mibaya kachash pasam mechama melacha batur. It's also going to be patur. Meta melacha means I'm going to be patur if it dies because of the melacha that I did. So I borrowed an animal and I'm plowing it normally. I didn't do anything abnormal. No negligence. I'm plowing it and it just drops dead. I'm patur. Why? I borrowed it. You lent me your car. I'm driving normally on the street. Boom. The motor goes. Again, I didn't drive without gas. I didn't drive without oil. I'm patur. I didn't do anything wrong. So it's patur. So he says, there was a story. Somebody comes and he borrowed an axe from his friend. The Itvar broke. The Rabbi that came from Rabbi Marley says, he said, go come and bring a proof that you didn't do anything wrong. You didn't do something wrong. You don't. And then you're going to become patur. What happens if you don't have witnesses? The guy comes and says, I have no witnesses. What? So Tashema, the Gavra, the Shalom Mechavre, Itvar broke. He came from Rabbi Marley. He said, go pay it. Amru le Rav Kana Ravasi le Rav. Rav Kana Ravasi said to Rav, is that the halacha? Shatik, he kept quiet. The hilchata is like Rav Kana Ravasi that he asked the Mahadal el Tavre that he's going to give it back. And he has to be mashlim the difference between them. But he doesn't have to actually come and bring right the witnesses. All he has to do is he's going to come and he's going to give the difference between the Kli Shalem and what you brought back. You brought back a broken item, you just pay the difference. But you don't have to do anything else.